Ask questions. When there is any manipulation that has been detected between you and another person, it is vital for the victim to start by asking a lot of questions. Those are going to start with the victim asking themselves a few of the questions first. These can start with questions about whether or not the other person is treating you with respect. Is the other person asking you fair things? Are they putting you in lots of positions that they already know make you feel pretty uncomfortable? When you look at the balance of power in the relationship, does it look good or not? Once you have been able to answer these questions, the victim of the manipulation will be able to figure out if they were being taken advantage of or not. They are then able to form the basis for their confrontation, so they are better prepared and ready to handle the situation. You want to make sure that the conversation with the manipulator is as healthy and productive as possible. And you want to make sure that you get the facts straight and that you understand what is going on, with some examples to back you up before you get started. You may find that it is helpful to ask your manipulator a lot of questions during this time as well. It can put the victim in a position of power and can make the manipulator look back at their behavior. You could ask the abuser if the request they are asking for is reasonable. Would they be willing to ask the same thing from someone else? Would they be willing to do the same work themselves? Is the person asking, or are they demanding? Do they, the victim, have any choice in the matter? When you ask these kinds of questions, you can create a mirror, and the manipulator is going to be forced to take a look at themselves. They have to see what they are doing and how they are behaving to the victim, and in a way, they are being confronted with the truth. Remember that in many cases, the manipulator still isn't going to care too much about this. This can be a big mirror looking back at the manipulator, but they may not care. If they are asked these questions, they may get angry, or they will use other tactics to convince the victim that the manipulator isn't to blame, or that the victim is crazy. Take your time. The manipulator may decide that the best tactic to use is to work with speed or time pressure to help them get the victim to behave the way they want. This is going to be done as a way to distract the victims, and it lowers the amount of time that the victim gets to think the situation or the task at hand over. You do not have to go at the speed that the manipulator wants. You are allowed to slow things down and take your time, making it easier to pick the right decisions along the way. You can make sure that the manipulator knows that you won't allow them to scare you into making a decision or saying yes or no. If you aren't sure about what you want to do or what you should say at this time, then just let the manipulator that you are going to think about it. This isn't going to give the definitive yes or no. In this case, it lets the manipulator know that you will put some time into the request and thinking about it, then deciding whether it is something that you would like to do, or even if it is something good for you to do. Many people are going to be afraid to speak up with this because they are worried that it is going to upset the other person. But in all situations, your feelings are going to be the ones that take priority. If the other person keeps on pushing or gets upset that the decision isn't going to be made at right that time, then you can be assured that they are trying to use manipulative techniques on you. They don't want you to think through the decision. They want you to go along with what they are suggesting. When you slow things down, you are taking the control away from the manipulator, and you can then make your own decisions. You may see this type of tactic occur in many jobs and with many different bosses. They may use the speed tactic to get the employee to do what the boss wants. They may offer you a position with a specific salary, but then they say that you need to make the decision quickly, or they will have to pick someone else. But you always have time to consider the job and even negotiate on the salary. Anyone who tries this tactic is usually trying to get something out of it, such as paying you a lower wage or not letting you learn about the promotion first. It is an effective tactic, but you can avoid it if you know what steps to take to slow things down. Practice the art of saying no. One thing that can be challenging for a lot of victims, especially those who have been a victim of manipulation for many years, is the ability to say no to things manipulators are usually able to make the victim feel, as if the answer of no isn't an option for the victim. They can often frame the question or the task in a way that makes the victim feel like if they say no, they are going to lose out on something. You have to remember here that manipulators are going to be all about taking with very little giving. This means that they are going to have a lot of skills when it comes to forcing others to say yes as often as possible. They are masters at this, and often we will say yes to something, even if we don't want to do it. The manipulator has a ton of techniques at their disposal to do this, including using embarrassment, shame, and guilt to force the victim to give in. But to make sure that you can overcome some of these scenarios of manipulation, the victim has to learn how to say no when it is needed. As a victim, you may find that saying no to the manipulator is something that needs to start happening if you want any hope of seeing success and getting free of the vicious cycle. Telling someone that you aren't available to help with that the request they are making doesn't make you feel comfortable, or that you just don't want to do it, isn't an easy thing. It is so crucial when it comes to being able to overcome some of the manipulative scenarios that you have been dealing with. Saying no is healthy. Whether you are in one of these situations or not, saying no to those around you can help set up boundaries. It sends out a firm message about what you are comfortable with and what you will not do. Sometimes saying no is more about trusting your gut, something almost impossible for those who have been under the control of a manipulator for a long time. Yes, the manipulator has been working to take away your thoughts and feelings for some time, and they may make you feel like your personal opinion isn't valid. They are good at making no seem like the wrong option, no matter what they ask of you. As the victim, it is crucial for you to get back to a place where you can trust your instincts and rely on some of the feelings that are coming from your gut. No one should be put through an uncomfortable scenario just because they are afraid that saying no will make someone not like them or make someone get mad at them. A good way to tell if you are being manipulated is whether the other person gets angry when you say no. If someone asks you a favor that you don't want to do and you say no, they will just say that is fine and be understanding if they aren't trying to manipulate you. But if the person starts to get mad at you because you said no to them, then this person probably wasn't the best thing for you to deal with in the first place. One thing to keep in mind here is that once you do start saying no more, especially if you find that most of the requests come from one person, that you may lose a friend in the process. That person may even stop talking to the victim. While no one wants to lose a friend in this process, this is something perfect. If you lose someone as a friend and they refuse to talk to you just because you set up boundaries and stayed with them rather than giving in all the time, then they probably weren't that good of a friend in the first place. It is always a good thing in life to know who is a real friend for you and who is there just because they knew that they were able to get you to say yes to whatever they wanted. Confronting the manipulator can be a tricky experience. The victim has spent a lot of time under the control of the manipulator, and they may be uncertain about how to handle situations and even how to have their own opinions again. Many times, they had formed a connection with the manipulator, and they may hope that things will get better, or be worried that they will be all alone if they make the manipulator mad. Of course, the manipulator doesn't want to give up on their control either. They like having power over the victim, and they are going to take any steps that they need to ensure that the victim isn't able to leave that control. There's going to be a lot of resistance and denial when the victim is trying to confront their manipulator. But as the victim, it is essential to stand up from this and understand that no one can make you feel bad or take away your own decisions unless you let them. Once you can break the cycle of manipulation, you will see a significant change in your health and your happiness. Set your guidelines. During this process, you need to decide what acceptable limits are and what you will allow or not allow from the manipulator, especially if you plan to still have the manipulator in your life, whether it is a family member or the boss at work. You have to be the one in control with this, and you need to be willing to stand firm and not let the other person intimidate you or try to push against you. What behaviors do you think will be acceptable that will make sure that you still get the freedom and the control How much contact will you have with the manipulator? When will you allow them to be in your life? When will you respond to them? And when will you listen to the requests that they send to you? The manipulator is going to rebel against these. They have most likely spent years manipulating you, and they got used to getting the things that they wanted. When you take that away from them, they are going to get angry. They are going to try and see if they can convince you to change your mind and go back to the way that things were before. They will get mad, get loud, assure you that you are crazy, use guilt, and belittle you in the attempt to get you to go back to the way things were, the way that had them in control. But you have to set the guidelines that you are comfortable with and stick with those. Of course, once you start to set these limits, you have to stick with them. If you give in at all, the manipulator will keep pushing back against you until you break again. It is hard for you to go through and fight against the manipulator if they feel that they can break the boundaries all the time. They are going to fight against it a bit, but you must pick your limits and then stick with them, no matter what, to make sure that you can maintain the control that you need in your life.